Welcome to this special edition of Cronkite News. I'm Azucena Martinez. Thank you for joining us. Cronkite News has a dedicated team covering the cross-section of cultures and the political debate over our border regions. Here are some of our top stories from the Borderlands Bureau.
The deportation of Mesa mother Guadalupe Garcia de Reyes made national headlines last February. At the time, she was the first person deported under President Trump's new executive order to crack down on undocumented immigration. Cronkite News reporter Adriana de Alba is following the story.
It was supposed to be a routine check-in, but it was here that Guadalupe Garcia de Reyes spent her final moments in the U.S. with her children after being detained by Immigration and Customs Enforcement. We caught up with the family 1 year later to see how they're coping with the separation.
It's a moment that became a flashpoint in the immigration debate. These images of Guadalupe Garcia de Reyes watching her two children from the inside of a locked van, hours before being deported to Mexico. 12 months later, the family describes every waking moment since her deportation as a living nightmare.
¿Cómo has estado?
They say a video chat at the end of each night is the only thing they have to look forward to.
It's been pretty tough on me. Because I was so used to coming to my mom, not just for needing to talk to her, but to just to go just hang out with her, I would always go and lay down next to her in her bed, and now I can't do that, because she's not here.
I can't even describe my feelings. The best way I can describe it is I just feel really empty inside of my heart. My mom was my everything, so it's like half of my heart is missing.
I'm here and I'm gonna keep on fighting.
Her children are not the only ones suffering. More than 1,400 miles away in Acámbaro, Mexico, Guadalupe is now battling depression, living at her elderly parents' home. With the help of the Mexican government, she opened up a tortilla shop, but is struggling financially. Guadalupe was first arrested back in 2008 during an immigration raid and convicted of a felony for using someone's social security number to work as a custodian. Immigration lawyer Reyes is trying to reopen her felony case to have that conviction thrown out, based on the grounds that ex-Sheriff Joe Arpaio's immigration raids at workplaces were deemed unconstitutional. Back in Mesa, pictures of her are all around, but this family home feels empty. Guadalupe's husband has asked us not to identify him by name.
My wife is missing. That's what's missing, the important part of our family. Coming home and not smelling that food, ready for us when we get home. Her not being here, it changed. Everything changed a lot.
For now, the family says they hang on to their religious faith, finding strength one day at a time.
I hope that my mom comes home, but I also hope that the separation of families stops because, it's simply not fair.
As of right now, the family is waiting to see if the federal government will reopen her felony case. That decision is expected March 5th. In Phoenix, Adriana de Alba, Cronkite News.
A decision announced today by the Supreme Court is being looked at by some as a victory for DACA recipients and advocates. But the process of reaching a final decision is still ongoing. Cronkite News reporter Adriana de Alba spoke with members of the Valley DACA community as they reacted to the ruling and speak about what's next.
It has been draining. We have been fighting for too long. I'm honestly tired. I've been getting sick, and I think it's because of the stress that we go under, the anxiety.
That anxiety relieved a bit, at least for now, after the Supreme Court decided today that it would not take up a bid by the Trump administration to bypass a federal appeals court and get the SCOTUS to take up the case. Today's decision buys DACA recipients some time, as the March 5th deadline for a decision looms in the background, just 1 week away.
The Supreme Court has basically said we're going to allow lower courts, the Court of Appeals, to run through its process to make a decision. And then we anticipate that whether it's for or against DACA recipients, there will be appeals.
Meanwhile, DACA recipients can continue to apply for renewal based upon the two lower rulings from the U.S. District Courts.
I hope that Congress does the right thing. Even when President Trump says that he doesn't want something clean as a legislation for DACA, we want Congress to do the right thing and stand on the right side of history.
Although the March 5th deadline may now be in legal limbo, Local DACA recipients say they'll continue their efforts to push Congress for a permanent solution. In Phoenix, Adriana de Alba, Cronkite News.
The Ninth Circuit Appeals Court hasn't set a date yet to hear arguments, but has told lawyers they must file briefs through the month of April.
Communities from both sides of the border came together over the weekend, displaying a transnational partnership through art and dance. Cronkite News reporter Lillian Donahue went across the border to see how two nations became one.
The U.S.-Mexico border fence spans as far as the eye can see. As big as it is, for 1 hour, both sides came together in a very close relationship. 2 stages, 2 languages, 2 countries, 1 performance. Dozens of dancers and artists came together over the weekend on the border between Douglas, Arizona and Agua Prieta, Mexico, using art to transcend barriers.
To create something that may have meaning to one person and a different meaning to another person still has a communication and a shared point. And I think that is what we're trying to do, is trying to be cross-border and cross-culture and cross-language.
The performance is a part of the Binational Arts Residency, a collaboration between many different organizations and educational institutions. It's also completely led by women.
It's a really important moment in time for something like this to be created by women coming together and working together.
Alvarez also says the dancers represent a multi-dimensional diversity at a critical time in the history of U.S.-Mexico relations.
There's this border and we just created a show together. We actually, for a moment in time, existed together in a space.
For some, the performance was an emotional glimpse into the future as the next generation learns about cross-country collaboration.
And just to see our local artists do what they did, it just fills me with so much hope and happiness.
I hope that we can continue doing more things like this so that children can learn that we are not two, we are one, like they say, without borders.
And if just for a moment, both sides brought together despite the barriers that stand in the way. What were once blank canvases are now filled with color, a representation of the day for those who are going home to their separate countries, but shared 1 hour together. Lillian Donahue, Cronkite News.
The World Championships of Hoop Dancing brought indigenous tribes from all across North America to the Valley this month. One local family showing the world the importance of their native culture, and they're doing it through dance. Lillian Donahue has the story.
I'm part of the Duncan family, and we all hoop dance.
More than a dozen dancers spanning 3 generations make up the Duncan clan, an Apache family that's devoted their lives to using dance as a way to keep their culture alive. After months of intense practice, 10 family members showed off their routines at the World Championship of Hoop Dancing in Phoenix. The youngest, less than 2 years old. 7-year-old Tizak was not afraid during his first competition.
I'm usually a comedy guy. I like to do funny stuff.
In hoop dancing, the circle represents the circle of life. Now, the dancers can use from 4 to up to 40 of these to make different designs of everything under the sun, from eagles to horses. More than just a dance, hoop dancing is a sport with intricate moves and fast footwork. The family travels around the world with other Native performers, hoping to preserve and share their tradition.
There's a lot of people on this earth, and a lot of them might not know about our culture.
The Duncan dancers have consistently ranked in the World Championships for years, but beyond merit, this year had a special family touch during the final round.
And the song that I'm going to sing is a song that I actually created myself for my whole family. In Apache, the words say how beautiful they dance through the hoops.
In Phoenix, Lillian Donahue, Cronkite News.
Several Arizona Jewish organizations, along with pro-immigrant advocates, gathered in downtown Phoenix this week, hosting a Jews for Dreamers rally. Cronkite News reporter Alexis Burdine was there and spoke with Jewish community members about what motivated them to advocate for DACA recipients.
We make America strong.
Powerful messages of unity and support echoed through Cesar Chavez Memorial Plaza as members and leaders of the local Jewish community came together, showing solidarity with Valley Dreamers.
Seeing the Jewish have our back and be with us, stand on our side, I think it's helped because it shows that there is common ground.
Despite the unfavorable weather, the rally went on. Two different groups brought together, they say, by their quest to obtain social justice. These Jewish community members say they empathize with Dreamers because there was a time when Jewish people were uncertain of their future too.
We've had situations in the Jewish community where people have said send them back, and they sent them back to crematoria, they sent them back to gas chambers, they sent them back to horrific situations in death camps.
This is the first step of an ongoing collaboration, ongoing partnership that we just don't want to be out here for a night and then call it quits. We're here for the long haul.
DACA recipients here have shared with me it's the support found at rallies like these that make them feel like they are not alone in their quest for a permanent and clean solution to their situation.
I want to be on the side of history that did create a change. And I think that's what always encourages me and motivates me every single day to say, I know this is a reality at the moment, but there is ways to change history.
In Phoenix, Alexis Burdine, Cronkite News.
The DACA program is on life support. The Supreme Court has turned down the Trump administration's request to end DACA, which shields some 700,000 young immigrants from deportation. This decision buys the Dreamers more time. Cronkite News reporter Adriana de Alba explores what lawyers and community leaders are advising DACA recipients to do now.
It's early in the morning and the DREAM Act Coalition in Arizona is already busy. DACA recipient Neftali Moreno thought he was working against a deadline and was desperate to reapply.
I had my paperwork for like 2 weeks already and I wasn't really able to pay it out of pocket.
The changing political status of DACA is upending lives and wreaking havoc on businesses and organizations that help immigrants.
DACA recipients are not only going to community organizations for help, law offices like this one say it's been a busy time for them too.
Seth Draper is an immigration attorney with the Salvatierra Law Group. He says in the last year, work has been all-consuming.
Hola, Gilberto. ¿Cómo está? 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I would just have people asking me questions.
His firm currently has around 200 DACA clients, and they're advising all of them to renew.
Okay, muy bien. What do they stand to lose? I mean, at this point, it's really just money. However, the chance that they get those work permits for another 2 years, the chance that they stave off any adverse action by ICE, it's worth it.
According to U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, more than 240,000 people requested DACA renewals in 2017. That's up more than 40,000 from the previous year. Immigration attorney Alma Montes de Oca says until Congress comes up with a permanent solution, advising clients is a challenge.
Week by week, we're getting new decisions, depending on what circuits people live in, trying to figure out all those things. I think more than anything, it's frustration, anger, and sadness.
At the Arizona DREAM Act Coalition, Karina Ruiz works around the clock to help people renew, while she herself is a DACA recipient in limbo.
It has been draining. We have been fighting for too long. I'm honestly tired. I've been getting sick, and I think it's because of the stress that we go under, the anxiety.
That anxiety relieved a bit, at least for now. The work will continue until the future of thousands of people is decided. In Phoenix, Adriana de Alba, Cronkite News.
Although Congress failed to meet the March 5th deadline to find a solution on DACA, the Dreamers are still pressing Washington to pass a bipartisan solution.
Today, the Supreme Court effectively denied the state of Arizona's request to stop issuing driver's licenses to Dreamers after it refused to hear a case that pitted the governor's office against the Arizona DREAM Act Coalition, or ADAC. Reporter Tim Johns talked to immigrant rights activists about the impact of this decision.
Like many Dreamers across Arizona today, Vianney Perez is breathing a sigh of relief. The United States Supreme Court's decision this morning means that she'll be able to keep her driver's license.
This is a basic thing that's essential to doing anything in the state.
just having an ID on you, you know.
Perez says that although having a driver's license may not seem like a big deal to most people, for her and other DACA recipients, it's of the utmost importance.
I don't have to worry about being pulled over and worrying about, dang, you know, I don't have ID on me.
The case dates back to 2012 after DACA was announced by the Obama administration. Then Arizona Governor Jan Brewer said that the state could deny licenses to Dreamers, with the process ultimately reaching the highest court in the U.S. Karina Ruiz, executive director of the Arizona DreamAts Coalition, says that although the fight has been tough at times, her organization never doubted that the courts would ultimately make this decision.
We always knew that we were on the right side of history, that there's no harm caused by immigrant youth driving legally in Arizona.
And as for Perez, despite today's victory, she says it's important to remember the bigger picture.
There's a phase to these numbers and to DACA. It's not just an acronym. It's so frustrating to see your community being attacked.
In Phoenix, Tim Johns, Cronkite News.
Mark Brnovich's office released a statement saying he was disappointed in today's decision because he believes the court sidestepped the issue of whether DACA was legal in the first place as an executive order under President Obama.
This past weekend, Secretary Zinke spent some time at the Mexican border to discuss border security. Cronkite News reporter Lillian Donahue traveled to the southern Pima County for his visit.
Clear.
Riding in on a horse with full cowboy gear on, Secretary of the Interior Ryan Zinke was clear and cut to the chase during his weekend visit to the Arizona-Mexico border.
You know, clearly we're going to build a wall. Clearly the design yet is not finished.
Zinke spent time along Arizona's 370-mile-long southern border for the first time, discussing Trump's plan to build a controversial wall and the administration's plan for increased security. He also took the opportunity to speak with local environmentalists, native groups, and Border Patrol agents.
There's a lot of bad people that come across with weapons and drugs and things. And we have to make sure we secure the border, and it's important that we all work together to do it.
The U.S. Department of Interior controls about 40% of the 2,000-mile-long border between the U.S. and Mexico. In fact, 80% of the Tucson sector is controlled by DOI public land, according to the Border Patrol, just like where I'm standing right now on the Buenos Aires National Wildlife Refuge. Some environmentalists say building a border wall will negatively affect the wildlife in the area, but Border Patrol agents say the existing fence has actually helped by deterring people from crossing through the refuge.
Because of the establishment of the pedestrian barrier, we've actually been able to help defragment the Buenos Aires.
But not everyone is convinced. Those at the Center for Biological Diversity call the wall a disaster for wildlife.
We have an amazing array of plants and animals that live in the border region. The border wall blocks movement for many species along the border.
The center was the first to file suit against the Trump administration's border wall, but that has not stopped the production of prototypes and further planning. Secretary Zinke has recently pushed to conserve wildlife corridors along public land. Although he says Trump's proposed wall will keep more Americans safe, he agrees it's not perfect.
It doesn't fix everything, but it fixes certainly a class of problems.
In Sasabe, Lillian Donahue, Cronkite News.
The secretary said he plans to speak with President Trump about the concerns he heard along the border during their next cabinet meeting on Wednesday.
Amid the uncertain future of DACA, young immigrants are not the only ones concerned about an end to that program. Business owners will also see an impact. Reporter Adriana de Alba explores how ending DACA would have a serious impact on Arizona's restaurant industry.
At the Wildflower Bread Company, preparing baked goods may be a never-ending cycle, but it's also a blessing for Claudia Gutierrez, who works as the company's head pastry chef.
I love what I do. I love pastry, but the main thing is because we are like a family, that they care for each other.
She started in the company's sanitation department. Today, she's a manager at its headquarters and also happens to be a DACA recipient. The thought of losing that protection weighs on her shoulders every day. But it's here where she has found someone to lean on, the company's founder, Louis Basil.
As soon as, we start about here in DACA, he helped me a lot.
Over the course of 22 years, Basile has expanded Wildflower to 14 locations around Arizona. For him, the so-called dreamers have been an integral part of his company, and he wants his voice as a restaurant owner to be heard.
They are a part of this country, and we need to remove the uncertainty that somehow suggests that they're not an integral part of what makes America great.
In a letter written to Arizona Senator John McCain, Basile urges him to find a long-term solution for DACA recipients in limbo, stressing that dreamers make up more than 5% of his employees. But 57% of the dreamers stay with Wildflower for more than 3 years. The New American Economy estimates that more than 18% of DACA-eligible employees make up the restaurant industry, the #1 field they work in.
The simple reality is that we need employees. Some of our best employees are our dreamers and our DACA employees.
There is an argument, of course, that these are folks who are coming here and taking jobs from Americans. The reality, of course, is that if you do the math, you realize that we're at full employment, and yet many of these undocumented workers are working. And so they're not taking jobs, they're filling jobs that would not be filled otherwise.
While ending DACA would have an economic impact for Basile and his business, he says it really boils down to a humanitarian issue.
The dreamers are the American dream, okay? They want to work hard. They don't mind starting at the bottom and working their way up. You heard from Claudia where she started, okay? That's not dissimilar to my situation. I started in the restaurant business as a dishwasher, and here I am as the founder and owner of the Wildflower. So that dream exists. However, we have to give people the opportunity to actually achieve that dream.
In Scottsdale, Adriana de Alba, Cronkite News.
Basile is currently working on opening 3 additional Wildflower locations, but says the biggest challenge restaurant owners face is the ongoing issue of finding good staff to run their restaurant.
A group of Valley community members, including many high schoolers, met earlier this week to learn how to become activists for causes they believe in. They shared personal stories describing what motivated them to spark a change. Cronkite News reporter Alexis Burdine was there.
I'm here to get involved.
I was exposed to a lot of sexism.
Inside the Mesa Public Library Tuesday, participants came together for one cause: equality. The activist training meeting, put together by the Young Progressives of Arizona, was born after students at Westwood High School's Latino Club and Mountain View High School's Young Democrats Club realized they have much more in common than just their age.
We got in touch and realized that we're both, being politically active at our schools, and decided that we should do something more.
Harb says coming from a culturally mixed family, being gay, and living in different socioeconomic levels motivated him to become an activist. And he's not alone. Brenda Alvarez, a student activist among the group, shared how the uncertainty of immigration reform has impacted her and her family. She moved to Mexico City with her family when she was 11 years old, leaving the U.S. out of fear due to their undocumented status. But unlike them, she's a U.S. citizen.
I thought I would be more accepted because there was more people that looked like me, and it was like the total opposite.
So she decided to move back to Arizona.
I had bigger aspirations and goals to meet. I wanted a better education.
But that education came at a cost, leaving her family behind in Mexico. Still, she continues to fight.
Maybe in the future we can actually have something that actually leads a pathway to citizenship.
In Mesa, Alexis Burdine, Cronkite News.
Harb said the group plans to meet at the library once a month to continue improving and strategizing their activism methods.
About 5,000 athletes, families, and friends gathered at Tempe Town Lake over the weekend, celebrating an ancient sport with a rich history which began in a faraway country. Cronkite News reporter Alexis Burdine was there and shows us what it was all about.
It was a race to the finish line as several teams participated in the 15th annual Arizona Dragon Boat Festival over the weekend in Tempe. Some of the boats propelled by cancer survivors who paddled with a purpose.
And it takes a team of people and friends to be able to
beat cancer. And when we do the races, we're honoring each other, and we're also honoring the ones who've left us.
People from all over the valley came out to watch performances, cheer on paddlers, and shop. Other supporters like Mike Szymanski came all the way from Alaska.
They do a great job for supporting people with disabilities. As you may see, I've only got one leg myself, and these dragon boat events are just spectacular because you see people out there, old, young, athletes.
While these boats are crafted to look like dragons, the history of the sport actually doesn't have that much to do with the mystical beasts.
The sport began about 2,000 years ago when a poet, Chu Yen, who was loyal to China's emperor, was framed for treason and forced into exile.
And he was so ashamed that he was found guilty even though he wasn't guilty. What he did is he committed suicide by driving in the river.
Those who knew the beloved poet didn't want him to die with dishonor, so they took their long fishermen's boats and searched for his body in the middle of the river, beating drums to scare the fish away, thus creating the origin of this ancient Chinese tradition. In Tempe, Alexis Burdine, Cronkite News.
While the festival provides a weekend filled with fun and activities, it also serves a greater purpose. This particular dragon boat racing event helped support Arizona disabled sports, among other charitable causes as well.
That's it for this special edition of Cronkite News. For top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.
I'm Judy Woodruff, anchor and managing editor of the PBS NewsHour. The journalists of tomorrow face a fast-changing media landscape, but quality news remains vitally important to our communities, our country, and our world. At ASU's Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication, students learn solid, reliable reporting, holding the powerful accountable, and rebuilding the public's trust. The Cronkite School and Arizona PBS, preparing the next generation for a stronger future of journalism.